Give people a couple of minutes to get on. I want to welcome you to today's webinar that will be focused on integrating health into the transition IEP. As a reminder, if you are joining us by phone, please take a moment now to press *6 to mute your phone line. There will be an opportunity for comments and questions at the end of the presentation, at which point you can unmute your line by pressing *6 should you wish to ask a question. If you are joining us by both phone and online, we encourage you to use the chat box to pose a question or comment, or if you need assistance. Welcome to the webinar. We will begin momentarily. As a reminder, if you are joining by phone, please press *6 to mute your phone line. If you're also joining by computer and phone, you need to press *6 to mute your phone line and turn down the volume on your computer speakers to avoid any interference on the line for our other participants. So good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar focused on integrating health into the transition IEP. Presenting today will be myself. I'm Carolyn Hayer, the Director of Parent and Professional Development at SPAN. And my co-presenter today is Dawn Monaco, who's the co-director of the Reach for Transition project, which is also housed at SPAN.
Good afternoon.
So I think we've covered the housekeeping issues. Again, please, if you're joining by phone, press *6 to mute your phone line. You can unmute yourself later after the presentation should you wish to ask a question. If you're joining by phone and computer, you need to both mute your phone line by pressing *6 and turn down the volume on your computer speakers. As a reminder, today's presentation is being recorded. All folks who registered for today's presentation will be sent a link to the recording, and it will be posted to the SPAN website for future reference. There are also some resources available to you, including today's PowerPoint presentation, which you will find in the Files pod, which is located directly above the chat box on your computer screen. So at this time, we will go ahead and get started. Today, we would like to focus our discussion with you on the importance of health in the transition process for youth and young adults. We're going to start with a review of what is the intent of the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And as a reminder, you should know that all children have available to them a free and appropriate public education that emphasizes special education and related services that are designed to meet their unique needs and to prepare them for, and here's the key part, further education, employment, and independent living. And this is what is provided for us and our children under the IDEA. So I want you to keep in mind that as you plan for transition, you need to be thinking about those various areas of further education, employment, and independent living to ensure that your children are developing skills in those areas. So under transition, the purpose of transition planning is to prepare for and improve the quality of adult life for our young adults. The transition plan includes a statement of transition service needs, which is really the long-range educational planning. So we need to be talking with our youth and with the professionals in their lives about what does this youth want to do in the long term and how can we appropriately plan for that. There needs to be a statement of transition needed services, and it is also important for the school district to make those connections for families, to link families to the needed programs, services, and supports. So transition is really an ongoing process of collecting data on the young individual's needs, what their preferences and interests are as they relate to the demands of the current and future workforce, their educational, living, personal, and social environments. So as you can see, there are a lot of areas to cover. We will need to use assessment data that will serve as the common thread in the transition process and that will form the basis for defining the goals and services that are to be included in the IEP. So age-appropriate transition is an ongoing process, and it's really critically important that we recognize that it's a long-term process. It's not something that's achieved in one day, but rather that we take our time and address these individual areas over the long term. So we can start with transition assessments, and we do that to determine the most appropriate post-high school outcomes for our youth. And we do that in a variety of ways, where we're looking at vocational evaluations to identify what are potential work opportunities for our youth. We need to conduct interest inventories so that we are sure that we are providing them opportunities in areas in which they are interested. We need to do independent living assessments to see what would be the most appropriate living arrangements that afford that young adult the most independence in their lives. And we need to utilize the information that is collected through psychological and educational testing and use that data to help to plan for future opportunities for our youth and to make sure that while they're still in school, they are having opportunities out in the community that are focused on their individual interests and abilities. So independent living skills is really critical as well. So they help to identify the supports that your youth will need to effectively live and work in the community. What might be some options, looking at what are the communication support services that are available for our young people. Will they need an interpreter? Are they in need of some type of augmentative communication system? And we can try to, based on that individual, look at what other needs they may have. Communication is a critical piece in order for them to be as independent as possible out in the community. Before we move on, I'm going to turn it over to Dawn now. I just want to remind folks to be sure to press *6 to mute their phone lines.
So there are several areas that we need, domains that we need to consider with regard to transition. Post-secondary education training. Will the young adult be going on to post-secondary education? Employment. Will they be moving on towards employment? Independent living, and of course health.
I'm sorry, Dawn, but I'm hearing some feedback on the line. Please, if you're joining by phone, press *6 on your phone to mute your phone line.
So it's very important that our young adults learn how to manage their own health, healthcare, health insurance, healthcare financing. It's imperative that they learn how to interact with healthcare providers, and that they're able to advocate for their health and healthcare. SPAN offers a fact sheet on healthcare finance fact sheet series that are available, and we can upload that and email that to participants as well. It's also housed on our website, and it's easily found through our resources. Youth with special needs must understand their own condition and needed treatment. It's very important for them to be able to advocate for themselves. They need to understand what their own needs and condition are. They need to be able to explain their condition and needed treatment to others. They need to learn how to monitor their health status on an ongoing basis, and learn how to ask for guidance from adults, including healthcare providers. And they also need to learn about the systems that will apply to them as they age into adulthood. Those could include health insurance, Social Security, guardianship and/or power of attorney for health care, and to understand formal and informal advocacy services and supports.
And I just want to add that these are very challenging systems to navigate through sometimes. So it's important for families to understand them as much as possible. SPAN can provide a myriad of resources and information to help guide through that process. But I think it's critical for families to start early, to start to familiarize themselves with these systems, how they work, how to access them, so that they can communicate this information to their youth and support their youth as they make decisions about how they're going to utilize the services and the adult systems that are available to them.
So with regard to addressing health in the IEP, under present levels of academic and achievement and functional performance, this area will include the impact of the student's health in relation to their disability, the student's current knowledge and skills, which could include recognition and management of their health needs, and need for supports, equipment, accommodations, adaptations related to their health issue. So some examples of that would be the number of days that school is missed due to the health condition, could be the impact of communication skills on the ability to get needs met. For example, John cannot verbally indicate when he needs to be repositioned to avoid pressure sores. The ability to self-administer medications, which is very important. It's important for young adults to understand that they have medication they need to take on a regular basis and when they need to take it. So, for example, Letitia needs reminders at lunch to access and take out to get a migraine and needs to go to the school nurse's office and take her medication. So I want to just repeat that. So it's important for young youth to recognize and take action on their symptoms. So if your young adult has a seizure disorder, and they know that right before their seizure they see sparkly lights, or right before a migraine comes on they see sparkly lights, it's important for them to recognize that, so that when that happens they know what to do, whether they go to the nurse or they go to the nearest adult. And the need for accommodation because of symptoms. So for example, Michael needs twice the usual time between classes due to pain and fatigue associated with his arthritis.
So now we're going to move on and talk a little bit about goals. It's very, very important that youth in transition have appropriate goals included in their IEP. So what is a post-secondary goal? It is generally understood to refer to those goals that a child hopes to achieve after they leave high school. However, while they are still in school, it is our role to make sure that they have the skills to achieve those goals. And the goals within that student's IEP should be appropriate to help them in the development of those necessary skills. So an annual goal is a statement that describes what a child with a disability can reasonably be expected to accomplish. It could be either mastering some skill or knowledge, and we expect that they will master that within the 12-month period in their special education program. So if your child has been receiving special education services for quite some time, I'm sure you're very familiar with the goals and objectives that are included in the IEP document. It is important to review those on an annual basis to ensure that our goals are appropriate for that student's age and skill level. I apologize. It sounds like someone has put us on hold and did not mute their line, and so we're getting background music. We will try to alleviate that situation as soon as possible. In the interim, try to turn down the volume. So I apologize. I will try to speak loudly, and I hope that you can hear me over the music. So again, an annual goal is a statement that describes what a child with a disability can reasonably be expected to accomplish within a 12-month period in their school, during their school year. We must annually review the goals to ensure that they are age appropriate and that we are helping our students to develop skills that are going to be useful to them in their post-secondary goals. Goals must also be measurable. A measurable goal is a statement that contains 4 critical elements. 1, it must be a timeline or time frame, meaning, and we've already established that we expect the student will achieve the goal by the end of the year. It must define the conditions in which the student will be able to exhibit that skill or behavior. It must also tell us the criteria for when we can determine that that student has mastered the skill. It should also include behavior, because this is something that students may need behaviors that need to either increase or decrease. And it should be measured at periodic intervals against some criterion of success. So we have to set forth in advance what is the skill and under what conditions and circumstances a student is expected to demonstrate that skill to determine whether or not they have mastered it. So if one of the skills we are working on with a young person is that they will be able to, their goal may be that they're going to appropriately maneuver themselves from one class to another on their high school campus. We also have to define during what times of the day this skill needs to be displayed. For example, a student may be able to navigate from one part of the building to another during class times when there's no one in the halls and the building is quiet, and they may have difficulty doing that during the time when classes are, students are switching from class to class. And so they may need some additional supports during that period of the day. The goal being that they'll be able to do it independently by the end of the year. And so we may need some supports in the beginning of the year that we can fade as the year goes on, and they can better demonstrate their ability level with that particular goal. So some goals need to be measurable. How do we define measurable? It should say who is going to do it. the student. What is it that they're going to do? And that's where we list some observable behavior, meaning anyone should be able to observe that student and determine whether or not they're able to demonstrate the skill. We also have to define when we expect them to master the skill. So we have a date listed in the IEP that we're going to review and look and see if we say that by January 1st of the school year the student will be able to do it, then in January we go back and check that. And then we say given what, which would be under what conditions. So in the example I used before, will it be they're navigating from one place to another during class, between classes, before school, after school? That should be defined in the IEP. And how much? So at what point do we determine that they have mastered this skill? So can they do it one time per day? Can they do it for the morning, or can they do it throughout the day? That's a team decision, and that should be defined in the IEP as well. And then we have to figure out, how will we measure that? How will we collect the performance data, and who's going to take it? So is there a staff member that's going to monitor that student or on a regular basis? Are they going to do it at different intervals? But there must be a way to collect data on how that student is performing, so that that performance data can be provided to the parents and can also be used to make decisions about whether or not the instruction that's being provided or the supports and services that are being provided need to be changed and either increased or decreased in some way. It's also critically important that we include health-related post-secondary goals in the student's transition planning. So they need to have and develop independent living skills. These are skills or tasks that contribute to the successful independent functioning of an individual in adulthood in the various domains listed here, which would be leisure and recreation, home maintenance, personal care, and community participation. So I've seen a lot of transition plans, and sometimes we have not incorporated these various domains into that IEP planning process. And it's going to be critical for our young people to develop skills in these areas if they're going to be successful in adulthood. So yes, they should know how to take care of the house and make their bed and load the dishwasher and do their laundry. Personal care, taking a shower, getting a haircut. Are they able to prepare meals and shop for groceries? Are they involved in their community with recreational activities, religious activities? So these are the types of things that we need to be looking at in the development of that transition IEP. In addition, we have to make sure that there are goals that are related to how the child is progressing in the general curriculum. And there should be goals that are related to any other needs that arise based on that individual student's disability. So you need to think about including as much self-care and independent management of health conditions as possible if that student is going to really be successful in terms of seeking out adult employment, independent living opportunities, and community participation. SPAN has a terrific resource available on our website, and I believe Dawn has included it here in the files pod for you. It's called the Health Passport. It's available in both English and Spanish, and this is a great tool to use with our young people in terms of starting to be more aware of and responsible for their own health care. As our students become teenagers, they should know when they go to the doctor If they're on medication, they should start to learn about what those medications are, what the dosage is, when it should be taken, and we as parents should start to give them some responsibility for managing that. Think about giving your young adult some time alone in the pediatrician's office. Teach them to use the health passport to help share with the doctor some important information about how they're feeling, help them to develop language around letting you know when they're not feeling well, sharing what's maybe hurting them, but giving them a larger and larger responsibility in managing their health care as they get older.
So these are some examples of goals that can be put in the IEP. James will learn how his oral care habits, medications, and diabetes affect his teeth and oral health, and identify a dentist to care for him. So James needs to understand what it is about his oral care and why it's important for him to understand that. Then Joe will understand how alcohol and other drugs interact with seizure medication so she can live safely in the community. So understanding that she has a seizure disorder and how different things can affect when or if a seizure will come on. Michaela will create a health organizer to track medications and appointments with her physicians. So making Michaela be responsible for the medications, when she goes to the doctors, when her appointment is, what day of the week works best for her, when to attend. That can be done in many various ways. It can be done with a paper planner, or a lot of our young adults have smartphones now, and there's many different apps that are available to help keep an organizer for them. So that's something that as professionals and parents, we can look into and see what works best for our young adult. And that's something that can be added into the IEP, and it can be taught in school and then generalized to home and in the community. Other examples are John will learn self-catheterization so he can independently take care of his toileting needs while attending culinary school. So if one of John's goals is post-secondary education, then in his IEP, that's a goal that they can work towards so that he can become independent with his self-catheterization. Monique will contact 2 adult care providers to interview during the first semester so she can choose a provider who will care for her before she turns 21. So prior to Monique turning 21, you can identify several healthcare providers in the community, and we can, as a goal, teach Monique how to work towards, learn first how to do the interview on paper, and then practice on the phone interviewing physicians. Yuri will learn to order and pay for his medicines so he can live independently in the community. First, Yuri needs to understand why he has medication, and then once that is understood, he can learn that how often he needs to order his medication, and then independently order medication on his own. So those are goals that he can work towards, the ultimate goal. Kaisha will identify symptoms that need urgent and emergent care and will develop a plan for emergency care. So that's the goal, but there are several steps that can be taken prior in order to get to that goal. So this is just a sample daily log in order to organize and their day. So at 6 a.m., the youth know that they need to get up and take a shower and wash their hair. Maybe there's a special reminder or a note that they need to do some stretching exercises before breakfast. At 7 a.m., eat breakfast, take your medication, brush your teeth. And again, this log can be done in paper form, or it can be done in a smartphone or on an iPad. There are many different ways that a log can be kept. 8 a.m., the bus comes at 8:15. Be sure to check the weather So that's important because depending on the weather, that will determine whether the youth need to wear a coat or not. And even checking the weather and understanding how to dress in the morning is important. And these are all ways to become independent. 9 a.m., they punch into work, put their lunch in the refrigerator. 10 o'clock is break time. They have a snack and a drink. At 11 o'clock, get back to work. And then at 12 is lunchtime. So, you know, if you think about it, we all work great with schedules. Most of the time, we don't even realize that we're on a schedule. But it's putting the young adults on a schedule like this will make the ability to be independent easier. So transition services, as we mentioned earlier, are a coordinated set of activities, and they're designed within, and this is really important, an outcome-oriented process. That statement, outcome-oriented, is key to this whole area, the whole statement. Outcome-oriented is really what we're leaning towards, and that's our goal. We want to promote movement from school to post-school activities. And then they can include, as we said earlier, post-secondary education, vocational training, integrated employment, which also includes supported employment, continuing education, adult services, independent living, and community participation. And all of this is based on the youth's needs. Very important. So the more we understand of the youth and their needs, the more successful their transition will be. And we need to take into account not only their needs, their strengths, preferences, and interests. It's important for us to include the young adult in this, and we understand what their preferences and interests are. So transition services shall include instruction, related services, community experiences, employment and other post-school adult living objectives, activities of daily living, and functional vocational assessment. And 1 year before the student turns 18, a statement that the student has been informed of the rights that will transfer to the student on reaching the age of maturity. So what this means is that at 18, they are considered an adult, and they need to sign to include the parent in the IEP process. And this also has impact on health.
Okay, so we need to be providing instruction for our students. We've already We've already provided some, instruction? Okay. So we've already provided some suggestions for you on ways to start to look at where your students' skills are and where they may need to receive some additional instruction in order to further develop those skills. So as Dawn mentioned earlier, the use of a smartphone or an alarm watch to help them to track their medication schedule so that you're not the person that's telling them when to take their medication, but rather they are learning how to do that on their own. If they're receiving medication in school, it should be noted in their IEP that they should develop independence in terms of knowing when they need to go to the nurse to receive medication as opposed to the nurse coming to them. They need to, if it's a student with diabetes, that they recognize the signs and symptoms of low blood sugar and that they know what needs to happen if they start to feel that way, that they may need a snack. So not only that they recognize that they need the snack, but also what is the appropriate snack for them to have. Do they need a cup of juice, or that they're not just saying, I need a drink of water, which is really not going to do anything to relieve those symptoms that they're experiencing. And as we noted before, it's so important for them to start to learn how to have conversations with their primary care providers and the specialists that they see. And that they are not quiet, silent bystanders during an office visit while mom and the doctor have a conversation about them, but rather you are encouraging them to be part of that conversation so that they can develop their self-advocacy and independence skills so that they can go into that doctor's office and ask for what they need. Speaking of self-advocacy, there are a few things within the health arena that we have to ensure that our students are able to do. So every student should be very well aware of and have knowledge of the HIPAA laws, which are the laws that protect their privacy in the healthcare arena. Once your student turns 18 and becomes an adult, the physician, the primary care provider, is going to need to speak directly with them as opposed to speaking with the parent. Now, of course, the adult, the young adult, can say that they want their parent to be part of that conversation, but it's incumbent upon us to make sure that our young adults understand what those privacy laws are, what the protections mean for them, and that they have a say in who has access to their medical and health information. One way to do this is through the use of a health power of attorney, so that the parents can be part of those important health decisions. But again, we have to be careful not to usurp that power and override the wishes of our youth, but rather to be supportive in helping them to understand the importance of the implications of the decisions that are being made. Another very key component is the issue of self-disclosure and self-identification. So there are laws such as ADA and Section 504 that provide protections to individuals with disabilities, both in at college and universities, in the workplace, etc. But an individual with a disability has to disclose that they have a disability in order to access the supports that are available to them. So it's important that our students understand the importance of self-disclosure and identification, and when they need to disclose and when they may not wish to do so. So we need to help them to understand that, and then how to disclose that information, who needs to be told and who does not need to be told. So really, there should be something in that student's IEP that they are learning about that process, so that they can understand how to share that information when they should and when they shouldn't. And again, so that they can develop those health advocacy skills to ask for assistance when it's needed, to know where to go and who to ask.
So health choices in daily life, these are some areas that it is important for youth to understand and can be addressed in the IEP. Nutrition, so food choices, healthy food choices, limitations, parameters. If the youth has an allergy, it's important for them to understand what their allergy is and that that's a particular food that they must stay away from. Basic cooking skills, including the safety in cooking, which is very important. Shopping, how to shop. For their food. Personal hygiene and emotional health. Very important skills that can be addressed in the IEP, because these are issues that can affect their success in post-secondary education as well as the work environment. Physical activities and exercise are important for a healthy living. Safety at home and in the community. Crossing the street safely, shopping safely, staying safe in their home, understanding the effects of drugs, alcohol, and also relationships and sexuality, which are often areas that are not addressed in school and should be. So managing health conditions, developing a personal health history and a care plan for health conditions. Again, that health passport that Carolyn had mentioned earlier is in the file section, and it really is a great tool to start a conversation between you and your youth, to fill it out and to share it with your school. We do have it available in Spanish as well. It's not in the file section in Spanish, but we have it on our website in Spanish and in English as well. Understanding and managing medications and accessing pharmacy. So there's a section in that health passport where you can, with your youth, put down what medications they take, what pharmacy they use, and start that conversation with your young adult. Learning how to self-advocate with doctors, as we said earlier, is really important. It's important that they understand their health and they're able to discuss it with the doctor. And what to do in an emergency. Knowing the signs and needs for personal emergency care and how to access that care. Understanding that what is an emergency and what to do in an emergency, as far as and including dialing 911 if necessary, and what to do in a disaster. So there is a little diagram on this slide where you can talk to your youth about your fire alarms in the home and what to do if they should go off and where to go. So it's very important that they understand emergencies and disaster when it comes to their daily living and to their health care. So, health and employment. Are work accommodations required? So, do you need any accommodations in the workforce? It's important that in order for them to understand that, they have to be able to advocate for themselves, understand their disability, understand if the physical environment, if they should require some sort of workspace that accommodates that. If their work hours need to be accommodated because they cannot stay in the workplace for only a certain amount of time, and medication administration while they're in the workplace.
I tried to call.
I'm sorry, please, if you could please mute your phone line.
Please press star 69 to mute your phone line.
I need to call in a station.
Is skill development required? So self-care activities, self-advocacy for health needs. It's we've been saying that throughout this whole PowerPoint. Standing up for your health and understanding. First understanding what your needs are and then being able to advocate for them.
Yeah, and then I just find out.
Okay, so now we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the nuts and bolts of the healthcare system. So first and foremost, how to get health insurance. This is a very important conversation to have as our children start to get older, because they need to understand how they access healthcare and how that is paid for. Do you have private insurance? Do you use Medicaid? If your child is eligible for Social Security, they would have access to Medicaid through SSI. What kind of plan do you have? Is it a managed care plan? Is it a fee-for-service plan? These are all things, again, very complicated systems. So we need to talk to our youth and start to work with them so that they can understand how to utilize these systems. Give your child a copy of your insurance card that they can keep in their wallet or purse. Have them pull that out when they go for a doctor's visit, so they start to understand what the process is when you get to the doctor's office. They're going to ask you for a copy of your insurance card. With regard to health care, who makes the decisions? How do you select your primary care physician? What do you do if you are not happy with that person? How do you change to a different primary care physician? What is the process to see a specialist? This is particularly important for children and youth who have special health care needs. They really need to be able to understand the healthcare system. How are they going to get to appointments? Do they have a mode of transportation, a reliable mode of transportation? When you're selecting that primary care physician, if you use public transportation, that's an important consideration, that the physician you select be near a public bus line or whatever it is, transportation system that you use. And then, of course, it's really, really important to keep accurate and up-to-date medical history and information. Again, we have on our website some tools that could help you to do that, some forms that you could download and complete with your child to start to get them to recognize what those systems are, what those tools are, and what information needs to be shared. The other thing that's important is starting to have those conversations with the doctor. We mentioned before about involving your child in those conversations, letting them take the lead on those conversations. SPAN also offers a health advocacy workshop, which can give you further information and guidance on how you might be able to make those connections for your youth.
And here, lastly, are some transition resources that we've provided for you where you can, this first one is Got Transition, which is the National Center for Transition to Adult Healthcare. We have also included a link on our own SPAN advocacy website and the National Family Professional Partnership, Being a Healthy Adult, a transition checklist. So there's a link there for it, but we've also included that in the files section. So now, if you have questions, you can unmute your lines, or you can put them in the chat box, and we can try to answer some of your questions. Okay, so someone has a question. Angela says, the points you have made about young adults understanding when they need to respond to their condition is really important. I have a 21-year-old. In addition to teaching her how to call in a prescription and how to contact her doctor's office, we also worked on recognizing her symptoms and responding to them before she got sick. Have you had any success in New Jersey in getting healthcare providers and educators? I'm sorry, this. I'm sorry. Have you had any success in New Jersey getting healthcare providers and educators to collaborate more closely in developing IEP goals? In my experience, the two systems operate in silos, and it is left to the patient or the student and their families to navigate.
I think that is probably true, which is one of the reasons that we try to provide information such as this to families, because it is probably families that are going to make this change occur. It's important also when children, right from the beginning, that schools are made aware of any sort of health concerns or conditions that a student may have, that there is an individualized health plan is incorporated into their IEP. I think schools are getting a little bit better at this, as there are an increasing number of students who have severe allergies, and it's certainly been an uphill climb for those families as well to get schools to recognize the very, very serious danger that is posed to their children if schools do not take the necessary steps to provide safe places in the building for students that may have a food allergy. So I think that has been something that has pushed the envelope a little bit in terms of getting schools to better understand some of their responsibilities in ensuring that the school is a safe place and that the health care needs of their students are considered and addressed in an appropriate manner. Ultimately, though, parents still do need to probably be the primary voice in ensuring that these conversations are taking place. But the good thing is that the IEP provides for this, so the tool is there. We just need to utilize it.
Kevin is asking how to get through child study team resistance to adding independent living and health goals in the IEP. Sometimes they focus only on academics.
I would agree that that's absolutely true. The requirements of what need to be included in the transition plan of the IEP are very clear. And so those are absolutely components that should be included. It's important that we utilize all of the procedural safeguards that are available to us in ensuring that the IEP complies with the law. And so you want to make sure that you're making your request in writing, and that you are then responding to the school district. So at any time when you make a request for something to be included in your child's IEP, the school district has 20 days to respond to that written request. And so you would then have at least a rationale for why they would be refusing to include that requested information in the IEP document. So that would be the first place to start, to make that request in writing.
Judy writes, what or how to get parents on board with preparing for a transition. Many times they don't even understand why a guardian needs to be obtained or have the child participate because parents have been so used to doing everything.
Well, transition planning, as I mentioned earlier, is definitely a long-term process. You cannot start too early. We do everything we can to help parents to understand the importance of planning, effective transition planning, and starting early. It's an overwhelming process, yes, but it's also a long-term process. Earlier we mentioned the issue of developing independence in our young people as they are going through transition. And you mentioned guardianship. That is not necessarily the path it's not the default. That's not where we want to start. That may be the appropriate outcome for some students, but we really want to start with building the independence of our youth and providing supported decision making to them. And we want to start that early. So some of the strategies that we mentioned earlier, giving your child tools like the health passport, giving them opportunities to speak directly with their physician. And as they get older, removing yourself from the room for part of that time, giving them 5 minutes. Well, I mean, a doctor's appointment, you don't get much time, but helping them to have some questions listed, same strategies that we use for ourselves that they can share. Maybe if they have some communication issues, maybe they're going to have it written on a card, a postcard. They're going to share it with the doctor. Then you can come in and, of course, hear that information, but it gives you an opportunity to let your child start to do that on their own. You can have follow-up conversations at home with them, but talking to them about their health care, finding out what they think is important, and helping them, guiding them to understanding the impact of the decisions that they make.
I want to remind everyone that the PowerPoint is available in the Files section right above the chat box here. There's a arrow to the right. If you click on that, you'll have the capability to download the PowerPoint along with the other resource material there. This webinar is being recorded. It will also be housed on the spanadvocacy.org website. I would also like to make you aware of the next webinar in this series, which is called Assistive Technology and Transition, and that will be held on July 7th. That will be open shortly for registrants. I will be posting the link right here for you so that you can register on that. Actually, I've just posted it now. So that's the transition one, the assistive technology, July 7th. That will be available later on today for to register.
And one of the some of the information that will be included in that webinar will be some of the things that we talked about today, how to use technology to assist your child in their health care, such as scheduling their doctor's appointment, setting reminders to take their medication, and even having conversations with you about making those healthcare decisions. So that will also be included in that assistive technology webinar.
Any other questions?
So it looks like we're right on time. It's 12:57. So we would like to take this opportunity to thank you for participating on today's webinar, to remind you to mark your calendar for July 7th for the Assistive Technology webinar. Please look for an email in your inbox later today where we will provide for you 3 things. There will be a link to the recording of today's presentation. There will be a link to the resources on our website regarding health care and transition, and where there will be a link to a brief evaluation. We'd love to get your feedback on today's webinar and hear from you about any other topics that you'd be interested in learning more about. So at this time, we want to thank you for joining us today and wish you a wonderful afternoon. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.